Space Station Silicon Valley. It's an often overlooked N64 title made by a little company called DMA Design, which was an obscure little company whose most notable work was this little indie title. I think like maybe 12 people bought it, called, what was it? Oh yeah, Grand Theft Auto. So for all you people out there e-murdering each other online, making it impossible for me to enjoy a nice afternoon drive without fear of a giant tank rolling up and blowing my car up, you owe it all to this game. Well, this, and Lemmings, and Uniracer, but mostly this game because I said so. And out of their entire body of work, this game feels like the most unique. The year is 2001. Space Station Silicon Valley, a sort of sci-fi petting zoo / amusement park / research center, has just launched. 7 minutes later, it loses contact with everyone, and slowly drifts out of the solar system. 1,000 years later, it reappears on a collision course with the E-Wrath, and the world government sends all the top scientists and strongest Marines to go investigate. However, they never return. The world government then decides to send Danger Dan and Evo the robot to save the day. Because they were the lowest bidders, and that's how bureaucracy works. However, on their way to the space station, there's an argument about the radio station, Evo knocks Dan out, and Dan crashes their spaceship into the space station, as well as killing a doomed romance in the process. Now Dan is trapped inside his rocket, and Evo has been horribly mutilated, reduced to only a small, severely damaged microchip. It's now up to the two of them to try and find a way out of this mess, and save the world. Now, if nothing about the plot has seemed remotely interesting to you, let's try the gameplay. It's a 3D puzzle platformer, but the key mechanic in this game is what truly sets it apart. Possession. Evo is left reduced to a microchip. All the animals in the space station are now robots, so provided that the animal is destroyed, Evo can possess their body. He then has to utilize the different abilities of each animal to solve various puzzles in each area in order to move on. That could be something as simple as killing all the hostile animals, or interacting with some of the machinery on the space station. But in order to do some of these most basic tasks, he has to swap to different animal bodies. For example, a sheep cannot possibly hurt any animal ever, so Evo can't use that to kill other animals. He'd have to then switch to, say, a ram or a dog. And all these animals behave differently, not just in terms of overall abilities, but also the way the AI reacts to your character. For example, if you were to play as a ram, suddenly all the sheep would start huddling around you for protection, as opposed to, say, if you were a fox, then the sheep would try and run away, and the ram would try and attack you. It's really neat to see the AI just sort of dynamically react to your presence, just depending on what you are. But it's not just Evo's presence. All the animals have a natural reaction to one another, and sometimes this means that you can end up attracting other animals to do the dirty work for you. Like, say, running around as a sheep, luring out a bunch of foxes to go and kill a ram for you, so that you could use the ram's body. There's tons of little minute bits of strategy that you can employ to make your life a lot easier. And because each animal has its own strengths and weaknesses, and some are just straight outclassed by all the other animals, like, say, the bear. The bear can do a ton of damage, so if you have to fight one, it's generally better to play it smart and use the environment as well as all the other animals to try and take the bear down for you. Now let's talk about the animals, because they're kind of a big part in this game. Each of the 4 habitats in this game have their own set of unique animals. Of course you have the basic things like the sheep, or the rats, or the foxes, but then you can run into cool things like rocket foxes, or turtle tanks. My personal favorite, the racing dog, which is armed with 2 rocket launchers. Or even, yes, the cool party walrus. Yeah, this guy knows what's up. One last thing about the animals. With the exception of 2 animals in this game, if you see it, you can possess it, and that's awesome. And if you get tired of any one environment, after you complete the first couple stages in each environment, you can move on to the next one. Yeah, at the end of the day, you have to clear each level in order to clear the game, but if you're tired of Neo-Europe, you can go to the North Pole, or the desert, or the jungle, and explore there for a couple levels, then go back. The biggest thing about gameplay here is, of course, the puzzles, and the nice thing about them is they aren't always spelled out for you. At the beginning of each level, you are given a bit of a synopsis of what you have to do, but it doesn't tell you specifically how you're supposed to go and do that. And sometimes they might omit challenges that you might have to complete before you get to even work on your main task. So it leaves a lot of open thinking up to the player as to how they have to approach each situation. And even then, these environments are filled to the brim with stuff to do, not just the necessary objectives, as well as 2 bonus objectives that are constant in each level. The first one being that you have to collect 15 purple power cells, and these aren't just random collectibles, these are basically necessary, because they are used to power up your character on the last level. The other constant collectible are souvenirs, solid gold objects that are replications of objects in that specific level. Now, how do you get these? Well, it's completely dependent on their level. They always require a skill testing or brain busting challenge though. Sometimes they're just out in the open and the real challenge is trying to get to it, but often they're hidden and require a specific challenge to be met before they'll appear. Now, unfortunately, these souvenirs are also the source of the first of 2 bugs I've noticed in this game. One souvenir, on the level Fat Bear Mountain, does not have collision programmed into it. So while you can complete its challenge, and while you can get to it and even touch it, you can never collect it. So this means that this game is unfortunately impossible to 100%. These souvenirs would also be used to unlock a special bonus game at the end of the game, but unfortunately, the only way to obtain it is with a code. But being completely honest here, you're not missing much. But I enjoyed trying to just track down all the collectible souvenirs in this game. The only other bug I noticed in this game was if you have the N64 RAM expansion pack installed, occasionally you will freeze up on the opening cutscene. I have no idea why, but it will sometimes happen. It is fairly inconsistent though, so it shouldn't happen more than once or twice. Beyond those 2 bugs, this game is a pretty well made game. I couldn't find any major ways of breaking it, or getting permanently stuck. On the topic of environments, they are incredibly sizable for singular isolated environments. I was really impressed about the overall draw distance in this game. You can pretty much see from one end of the environment to the other. And yeah, at a distance all the animals look like solid colored ovals, but at the same time, it's still quite impressive what they managed to do with the N64's power. One last thing I noticed about the environment is each environment sort of tells its own story of what happened in the space station. I mean, it could be something as simple as wandering around the environment, you could find the fuel production area of the space station. Or it could simply do with the main objective of the level, like collecting the severed heads of several scientists. Each little area, tied in with the overall mission objectives, helps tell a story of what happened there and what each piece of environment was for. And that's really cool that at the end of the day, while there is the story of Dan and Evo, there's also the story of what happened. And it's up to you to find it or completely ignore it if that's what you want to do. That's storytelling done right, and I love it. Also, side note, any game that's cynical enough to have severed heads as a collectible, that's just awesome. The overall aesthetic of the game is quite nice, the environments look good, and no matter where you go, you're always reminded that you're trapped on this space station, just out in the empty void. Sometimes some of the walls might have corroded down to the circuitry, or you can walk up and sometimes see a solid glass wall that you can just look out into the stars. It's a ton of really nice touches that just tie the entire game together, all within this one isolated space station. The sound design is relatively well done. This is the only time I could ever say it sounds like elevator music, and that's a compliment. Seriously, some of this stuff just sounds like really catchy elevator music, and for whatever reason, it all just works. Moreover, the music itself is an actual gameplay mechanic. The music is being pushed into each individual level by speakers you can find lying around. The closer you get to them, the louder the music will be, but you can also destroy them to turn off the music, and that's actually a requirement for one level, which was just another really clever thing the developers did to make this game so cool. And this game just has tons and tons of replayability, if only for how much personality this game has. I always find this game easily being one of the N64 games I go back and pick up every couple of years just because of how fun it is and how memorable it is. And honestly, that's why I'm really depressed we've never seen another one of these games. I mean, yeah, we keep seeing Grand Theft Auto after Grand Theft Auto, but never seen another Space Station Silicon Valley. It's really depressing because this is one of the most clever N64 titles I've ever seen, and it's easily one of my favorites. But the nice thing is it's not wildly expensive. It is certainly uncommon, and it has gone up in price since the time I bought my copy, but it does sit comfortably at $30 to $40. So if this looks cool, be sure to pick it up. It should also be noted this game was also released on the Game Boy Color, and from what I've heard it's a pretty faithful rendition, considering they took a 3D game and turned it into a 2D one. But that particular version was only released in the PAL region, which makes me sad because I desperately want a copy. There was also a PS1 release known as Evo's Space Adventure, but as I understand it's a pretty terrible port. They cut several levels, they completely changed the music, and everything just looks muddy and bad. That version was also only released in the PAL regions, but definitely try and steer clear of that one. And at the end of the day, Space Station Silicon Valley still stands as my favorite Rockstar title. Even if it doesn't have their name on it, it was made by them. It's got their cynical humor, but it also has a lot of ingenuity, unique concepts, and just clever design elements integrated into every single level and character that makes this game just full of personality, and definitely one that's worth remembering.